The international game has had a win after the final 5 candidates to host the 2030 Rugby League World Cup have been confirmed, and neither Australia or England are there. When the International Rugby League first called for expressions of interest to host the tournament, a whopping 11 countries responded, which in itself is way more than I would have expected. And of those 11, the final 5 are Kenya, South Africa, Papua New Guinea, the United States, and New Zealand. It's a hell of a mix, spanning 3 continents and having a heap of cultural variety. The International Rugby League are claiming it's the most geographically extensive bidding group in the men's competition's history. I'm going to go through each of these bids, ranking them from least likely to most likely, and I'll give you my verdict on where I reckon the best place to host the tournament would be. Starting off with what I think is the most optimistic bid, I've got Kenya ranked at the bottom in terms of likelihood. Rugby League does have a presence in Africa, and is potentially a brilliant breeding ground for talent, with the likes of Jason Saab having Nigerian heritage. The Kenyan domestic competition currently has 8 teams, and a tournament like this being hosted there would massively increase the amount of people who want to get involved in that competition. I actually would expect reasonably good crowds and interest levels from Kenya, just because I would expect that the people there would get behind any World Cup that's hosted on their soil. But the issue that stands out to me there is venues. There's conflicting information about the exact details of stadiums in Kenya. I found one source saying a stadium holds 30,000 and another source saying that the same stadium holds only 20,000. So really it's just hard to get a read on. From the looks of things, they've only got 3 stadiums that hold anything over 10,000, and to me that just isn't enough. You'd have to be playing games at small venues, which puts a hard cap on how successful the tournament can be. Kenya are currently looking to redevelop those stadiums in order to meet international standards and be able to host international tournaments, but until that happens, their venues just aren't on par with the other bids. South Africa, on the other hand, does have the infrastructure to host a Rugby League World Cup. Obviously, rugby union is the dominant sport there, so there are purpose-built stadiums and facilities for rugby, and our teams would potentially get access to those facilities if South Africa hosts the tournament. Speaking to the International Rugby League, the president of South Africa Rugby League said, "Rugby League, often referred to here as a sleeping giant, is poised for a transformative moment, with our bid not only capitalising on the growth of the sport in South Africa, but also across the continent." The South African competition is divided into 2 tiers, the first division having 8 teams in it, and the second division having 4 teams. Both leagues are semi-professional, which is impressive and encouraging. A Rugby League World Cup being hosted there could ignite that competition and take it to the next level, but there is a decent argument to say that trying to develop rugby league in a country where rugby union is so dominant is just too big a risk. A World Cup does take up a lot of money and a lot of resources, and I reckon that there's maybe other places where that opportunity could be better spent. I do have this as an unlikely bid for those reasons and for the resistance that we'd probably receive from union. But if the International Rugby League are looking to give it to one of the African bidders, there are a heap of reasons as to why South Africa does make sense. PNG are up next, and I'll start by saying that if I was going for just the best vibes possible, this would definitely be my pick. If I were a player, I'd want it to be hosted in PNG. I think it would be a truly unforgettable experience for everyone involved, and a tournament like that would live long in the memory of us as fans. The culture and vibrance of it would be felt by rugby league watchers across the world. But I do have it as less likely than the other 2 remaining bids. In terms of stadiums, there simply aren't as many high quality and high capacity ones as there are in other countries. And with there being such concern around the profitability of World Cups, which to this day we assume is the reason why they're reduced from 16 to 10 teams, I'm not sure that the organisers will be willing to sacrifice the extra ticket sales by hosting it in a country that doesn't have particularly large venues. PNG National Stadium holds under 15,000, and to me that just isn't enough. I wouldn't be against holding some fixtures in PNG if it was, say, a joint bid with New Zealand, but I do have some concerns around it hosting a tournament by itself. As I always say though, they are the best rugby league fans in the world, and they would bring a passion to the World Cup that no other nation would. In an ideal world, those are the fans who I would want to reward the most. Taking up second place is the USA, which isn't as far-fetched as you might initially think. The USA were actually awarded preferential status to host the 2025 World Cup a number of years ago, and while that did fall through, it is a good sign that the International Rugby League do think that hosting a World Cup in the USA is possible. And that was long before any talk of Vegas and all that stuff. As we all know, the NRL are now looking to expand into the US market. I'm not sure exactly what their long-term strategic vision is, but a 2030 World Cup there could be a really good thing to aim for and could really spark the game over there. Obviously, it goes without saying that they've got the required facilities and stadiums over there, with NFL and college football venues being relatively easily repurposed into rugby league facilities. Doing it in America at a decent level is ambitious, but I think it's possible. And I do love that ambition. For different reasons than PNG, I think the USA is another one that the players would absolutely love. We could focus it around communities and areas that have strong Pacific Islander presence as well, which would help us get decent crowds to games involving those countries. There is one glaring concern to me though, and it's a big one. The fact is that Rugby League World Cups are hosted around October and November, and that is when the NFL season is back into full swing. One of the things that makes me confident that the NRL can market themselves over there is that it generally occurs outside of the NFL season, but a Rugby League World Cup doesn't, and there is no chance that it would be able to compete for attention and resources when the NFL and college football are going on. Unfortunately, that's a stumbling block that I just don't think we'd be able to effectively overcome. The only way I could possibly see it happening is by pausing the NRL around the Origin period and hosting the World Cup in that time. And you would then have State of Origin be post-season for that year. That could work, but I think the vast majority of people would just fail to see the big picture and criticize the fact that we're moving around something like Origin. We do consistently see club footy take priority over rep footy, so I'm not sure it would really work in practice. And then lastly, we've got the option that is easily the least left field, but definitely the most realistic in my opinion. Rugby League in New Zealand is in a fantastic spot at the moment. The Warriors crowds this season have been phenomenal, despite their team struggling on field. And with the Kiwi national team having beat Australia 30-0 the last time those two teams played, the logical next step would be to award them a home World Cup. Like South Africa, New Zealand does have venues and facilities that are designed for rugby. Logistically speaking, it is by far the easiest of the 5 options. It would be a fantastic step forward too if paired with a second New Zealand side who would be looking to enter around that 2030 period. To me, New Zealand simply feels like the right choice. I think it's the perfect balance of ambition and realism. We know what we're going to get, we know that it's going to be good, and we know that it's going to help grow the game in a country that has shown an appetite for rugby league in recent years. The stadiums will be big enough, the interest in the tournament will be big enough. I do think that that is the right option. Now I will say, take this all with a pinch of salt, because some of you may remember that France was awarded the 2025 World Cup, and that just completely fell through. So I unfortunately wouldn't take it as absolutely certain that the World Cup will be hosted in one of these 5 countries. But we can only go off the information that's in front of us, and at the moment, this is the information in front of us. I do like to think that given the International Rugby League has whittled it down to these 5 countries, it will be one of these 5 countries. So, where would you like to see the World Cup hosted if it was up to you? I like New Zealand, but personally I'm happy with pretty much anything as long as there's 16 teams there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.